Today we're going to show you how to swap out a hydraulic cylinder on the back section of the 990s or the Commanders. Basically it's the lock bore cylinder to extend the lock bore. So basically you're going to need is like a 7/16 inch, half inch, 9/16, 5/8, 11/16, 3/4, and a crescent wrench, pliers. And I always recommend getting some spare parts like the flow control and the brass fittings beforehand, just in case something breaks, you have it on hand. You will need, probably will need shim stock as well to adjust the cylinders so they line up with the shafts. And then air hose, 3/8 OD air hose. In order to change out the hydraulic cylinder here, this is a hydraulic cylinder for the lock board to extend and retract. We're going to do a few things here. First we want to do is we want to make sure to lock out and tag out all electrical. We do not want any these motors or anything energizing while we're working on the machine. So please lock out, tag out your disconnects on your main electrical boxes. The next thing we'll do is we're going to activate the air solenoid valve up here to raise up that cylinder so we can take it off. And then as soon as we do that, we're going to turn the air off to the machine before we do anything else. Okay, so the next step is we have to locate the valve that says face bore. So we locate the air solenoid valve here, and I just take a little piece of metal or a screwdriver or anything, and what we're going to do is we're going to push this button in. At that point it's going to raise up. At that point it's going to raise up the cylinder, and we're going to put a block underneath there to so we can start working on the machine, okay, or replacing that cylinder. So we're going to do that now. So now that the block is in there and it's up off the bottom, what I can do now is I'll loosen up this nut, and then I can push this down so I can get the cylinder out without undoing it and trying to push up the motor and the drill. So that way we can take this out easier, okay? So right now we have everything blocked where we want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the air off to this whole system, because if we start undoing these hoses, it's going to blow oil and air all over the place. So there's two ways of turning the air off to this machine. You can turn the main disconnect off and do a lockout tag out there. That's probably the best way of doing it. But since we're doing it on a back section that hasn't been put into a machine yet, we are going to slide this valve down, and that will turn the air off to the whole system so we can start working on it. This valve is on the ones on the machine, so you could do this as well, but we really recommend you doing lockout tag out. Okay, the next step, now that we have it all blocked off, air's all turned off, is we're going to undo each of these hoses here. We can pull this one out, we can pull this one out, push the hose in, hold that orange in, and it pulls right out, okay? So you basically push these orange fittings in, and then as it's all the way in, you pull the hose out, and then it releases it. And then these here are underneath here. You can take a little screw and unscrew these. These will drop off. So we're down to here. And then on this one, we're going to take and unscrew this little fitting right here, and then this hose is going to come off. When you do this, make sure you have an oil pan or some kind of a catch basin here to catch all the oil. Since this is a new machine, I'm not going to take it off on this, but I just want you to know that. The next process is going to be removing this cylinder. So we're going to release this nut here. Okay, so the next step here is we're going to put a crescent wrench on this locking nut up here and put a 5/8 on the shaft of the cylinder, and then you're just going to release the nut here. And then at this point you can just start unturning this cylinder. The next step, after you undo the air fittings here, and this one here, I'm just going to leave this one on, we're going to take this bar off so we can get in here and loosen up this and get the cylinder out. So take a 7/16, just release all four of these nuts. There's one here, there's one here, and you can use a ratchet too if it's easier for you, and there's two up here. So we'll release these and we'll continue on. All right, we're just about done taking the bolts out. We're going to undo this last one here, and this is just going to come out and it's going to drape down. Hold on one second here. And then that's out of the way, okay? Then we'll take our 5/8 wrench. Nuts loose, so we can take this one now and just put the wrench in there. Never use the pliers on this because you'll scratch up the cylinders. If it's a bad one, you're gonna know ahead of time, but and of course it's a very tight fit. You gotta keep turning it, and then you turn it some more. Another way you could do it if you wanted to is you could take these cap bolts off, but sometimes we shim behind there as well. So I try not to do those unless I absolutely have to. See if it's all the way down. There we go. So I moved it. I just used the wrench and just pried down on it a little bit because these are hydraulic cylinders, so they're hard to move. Now what we're going to do is take a 1/2-inch wrench and we're going to loosen up the bottom. Okay. And probably a ratchet would be better, but this is what I have today. And these have Loctite on them, so they're a little bit tight backing out. Okay, so now I want you to look up here on the cylinder now, because this one here does have a shim on it. So as I pick this up, you're going to see a shim back there. So when you put the new one on, you're probably going to start with that shim. And these are slots here, so when you put the new cylinder on, you're going to go ahead and adjust it accordingly. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a scribe around it so I kind of know where to start, a good starting point is. So another good thing that you might want to try. So now we have it all apart, we're going to put it back together. So we're going to go ahead and put all the fittings on the cylinder. Now we're putting it back up. And that shim moved on me. So what I do is I'll put the bolt in there like that. Bring the cylinder back around. Get it into place. Put that one in. And then make sure. There we go. Trying to keep out of the way of the video here. All right, that one's screwed in pretty far. Okay, we got two of them in. Tilt it forward. Come on. There we go. That one. All right, we got them all started. We'll go ahead and we'll take our 1/2 inch and we'll get it all started back up again. And when we tighten these up, we're not going to tighten them up all the way. I'll explain here in a minute. We'll get them up here real close. Okay, so now that we have this on here and it's loose, you can see how it moves around a little bit. I put this hose back on. I'm going to put these two back in, just push them back in. Make sure they're tight. I always pull on them, make sure they're in. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the air on. We're going to raise this cylinder up manually by activating that valve up on top for the face bore. And we're going to pull this block off and we're going to let this come back down and rest on the angle iron rest on top of this cylinder. Now we'll take our 5/8 wrench and we're just going to start screwing this back in, same way we took it apart. And you have to, and we're such a tight fit here. Okay, so what I was doing is I was having problems with trying to tighten this up into the angle here because it was bottoming out against this plate because my wrench was too long. So this is a good scenario. So what I ended up doing is I loosened up, I'm going to take this angle iron off here. So I took 2 bolts off. I'm going to take these other 2 bolts off. It's a 5/16 Allen. So I'm going to move this cylinder out of the way. Just, it's okay like that. And I'm going to take these out. So we got the angle iron out now. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back around here, and this goes like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to just spin it on. There we go. And that's about where it was. It's just a little bit above being flush. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we'll tighten this up afterwards. I just like to tighten it up so it doesn't move. And then there was no, I looked in here, but there was no shims. Sometimes we put shims in here because this is not parallel with the angle, because sometimes these angle irons aren't square. So if that's the case, we have to adjust it accordingly there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll put the shim back in the bottom here. Let me put that in first. Put that in there where it was. Grab a bolt. Let's get this started anyway. Fold this back up and around. Put it on there. Get that turned a little bit. We'll put one more. That one doesn't want to go in yet. Let's see here. That one's going in. So I got the 2 closest to us in. It's trapped that piece of shim 5/1000 or 10/1000 shim stock. That's 10/1000. And then I'm going to start the other ones. Got that one started. And we got this one started. Okay. What I do is I run them in until they're just about there. Let's see here, 1/2 inch. All right, so the washers are a little bit loose on the bottom side, so I can move this in and out a little bit if I have to. And then now I'll go ahead and I'll start putting this back together. Let's see here, I need a Allen wrench. What I'm gonna have to do is Hang on a second here, I need a pry bar. Allen wrench. I'm just using the pliers. One. Now we're going to go ahead and move it up and down a few times to get it to line up. And you may see that cylinder move once or twice on the bottom. And you can do this process with no oil in there. Right now, I do not drain the oil out of this one, so it's still there. So now what I'm going to do is take my 5/16 wrench, and I'll tighten up the rest of, or excuse my 1/2" wrench, and tighten up the rest of these nuts on the bottom here. Just make sure these bolts are tight when you're done. Generally it's around 12, 13 foot-pounds. If you tighten it too much, this is aluminum housing here the cylinder's in, and you can strip them out. Okay, so now that we got that, we're going to cycle a few more times to make sure it goes up and down smoothly. That seems to be good. So now what you do is you turn the air off, and this cylinder is going to, or this chamber is going to be loose or empty. You're going to undo it here, and then you're going to have a funnel that'll come down, and you'll put some sys lube in here. And generally I will fill it up about half to 3/4, and then I'll run it a couple times. And what's going to happen is the oil's going to go down through here into the cylinder. It's going to fill up the top side of that cylinder, okay? And then at that point, when it's done, when you cycle it, when it goes up, you should see this come up to right about here. So this here is a little bit full for me right now. I prefer probably a little bit less, like 1/4 versus like almost 1/3. I'd like to see around 1/4. Because if it gets above this ring here, what will happen is the oil is going to go out through this tube, and it's going to come out your exhaust ports up there on your valve bank. And that's the same thing when your cylinder goes bad. When you start seeing a lot of oil around your valve banks or behind your machine, going, where's all that oil coming from? First thing I'd look at is this reservoir here. I bet you it's empty. And what happens is the seal in here will fail over time. It's on that piston that goes up and down inside here. And then the oil will go past there. And then when it cycles up and down, it's just going to keep blowing oil out the exhaust ports of your valve bank. Okay, so now once we got the oil in here and everything's working, there's no leaks, we can go ahead and bolt this limit switch bracket back on. So I'm just going ahead and put a couple bolts in here right now, and we'll be all ready to run it. And this one here, just have to remember, just pull that one down, put it underneath this one here to let it know it's retracted. And one more up here on the top, 4 bolts, and then 7/16 wrench to tighten them, or a socket, and you should be good to go. Okay, so we're going to show you a real machine that's just getting started. We're just starting it up. So as you can tell, the back section is all the way back, which doesn't give you any room to work on it. So we're going to come in here and click on the manual button, and ignore these right now because the rotation's backwards. So we're going to open it, which is going to close it for right now. So I'm going to bring it all the way in so that with adjust is all the way closed. Okay, and it stopped. So we're going to shut the machine off again, turn the main power off. I always wait till the computer shuts down before I shut the power off to the main machine, otherwise you can damage the computer. Okay, power's all off, lights are all off. We'll go do our lockout tag out, and then we can look at the machine. Okay, so when you start having problems with this air cylinder leaking, what you're going to find is you're going to see oil coming out of this port and this port, and it's just going to be full oil back here. So if you see that, first thing I'd look at is that reservoir down there on the bottom, and if that thing is empty, we know we have a problem with that cylinder. Okay, so that's what we need to look at. That'd be our first indication. So again, here's the, I'm going to point out a few quick things here. Here's the shut-off valve here if you want to turn it off here to work on it, or you can turn off the main air right down here just by turning this, and then you can do a lockout tag out on here so you can't turn it back on or someone can't turn it on while you're working on it. Okay? So, anyway, when you go to activate the valve, you just push this little orange button in here, and when you push that in where it says face bore, push that orange button in, that will raise up that motor, okay? And then you can put your block in there and block it up. As you can see, when you're in here, it's a tight quarters in here, so you make sure you have your oil pan right down here in the bottom. The bolts are right here that you undo for your cylinder. Take your cylinders off here. Just make sure this hose is in good condition. Sometimes when this starts leaking, it could be the hose itself. This is a new machine, so the hose is all flexible and good. If they get really brittle, I'd probably advise changing that. That's another thing that'll cause it to break. Is once they get brittle, they'll start cracking and leaking. These ferrules once in a while will fail on you as well. Just make sure those are good. If not, replace that. It's a $5 part. And then again, you may have to, as you can see here, like I was struggling with over there on the test bench, is 9 times out of 10, I think you're going to have to take these 4 bolts out and pull the whole thing out. It's going to be easier for you to work on. It's going to be faster, and you're not going to struggle as much.